And welcome to Fanalysis, where we combine the analytics used in fantasy football with sports betting to find you the sharpest angle. And for that, we turn to a sports betting analyst at Pickswise, Jared Smith. Jared, before we even get into week one, I want to start talking about season props, because season props really gives us a chance to predict certain elements of the season. And while a ton of money is flowing in on the Super Bowl champ props, the smart money tends to land on some of those under-the-radar kind of prop plays. So let's start things off with one of the teams that you're focusing on, an under-the-radar team, if you will, on the prop. A team who sputtered last year, but because of health issues. Which team are we looking at?
Yeah, the San Francisco 49ers, health and also turnover, Steve. And those are two categories that tend to be very volatile. The Niners were one of the worst teams in turnover margin last year, and we all know about the injuries that they suffered up and down the lineup, starting, of course, with Jimmy Garoppolo. And that's going to be the key. I think this 49ers team, if healthy, and the very hard thing to handicap, but I'm banking on some positive regression in that category this year. But with Jimmy G under center, Kyle Shanahan, 24-9 in his career, 7-27 without. And with Garoppolo in tow, I like the additions that they made along the offensive line. They added a center, Alex Mack. They drafted two guards who are both projected to be in the starting lineup. We also get Nick Bosa, a phenomenal defensive end, back from injury. This is pretty much the same roster with some key additions from that 2019 Super Bowl squad. And Steve, I think they're going to get off to a 2-0 start. Lions and Eagles early. I like the Niners win total over 10.5 this year.
And I think strength of schedule is so underrated, because we see the difference between a good team and a bad team is really only the teams that they're playing, their strength of schedule. So when you find a team that is not only getting healthy, plus their strength of schedule was diminished based on poor play the year before, boy, you've got a recipe for a winner right there.
Absolutely. And I would say San Francisco, if they are able to outperform that number this year, they play in a division where they're going to get a lot of chances to play very good teams. And that means that their number is going to creep higher. So right now, they're kind of middle of the odds board on the Super Bowl market. And again, you mentioned that easy win total. They're going to stack up victories this season, and I think that number is going to go south. I would not be surprised if San Francisco is representing the NFC in the Super Bowl this February.
So you can also bet on division winners, and injuries, as we've seen, can derail an entire team, an entire season. The AFC South, the Colts have a big question at quarterback, and that maybe provides an opportunity to fade the Colts in that division, but it leaves it wide open for another team. Who are you looking at?
Yeah. And when you look at that other team, the Tennessee Titans, it's very easy to rule out teams like Houston and Jacksonville, whereas other divisions, I know that there's some bottom feeders, but there's not a lot of divisions with two legit bottom feeders like Jacksonville and Houston. So we can basically say it's either going to be Tennessee or Indy to win the AFC South. If you got on this number early, I got it around plus 110. You feel really good, because that means that, less odds than a coin flip, going heads or tails, that Tennessee's going to win this division. Then you started to stack up the injuries. Carson Wentz, they've got some problems on the offensive line as well. The odds started to move in Tennessee's favor. I still would bet them up to maybe minus 120 or minus 130. If it's higher than that, you might be better off playing them week to week early on. But this Tennessee team is tough. They are gritty. They won the division last year. They probably have the best running game in the NFL and one of the best offensive lines. A little concerned that the offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, went to Atlanta, but they promoted the tight end coach, same system in place for Ryan Tannehill. And I think they've got the best chance to get off to the best start in this division because of all those problems the Colts are having at key areas like quarterback.
Now, we all know that you can pretty much bet anything, but you can also bet which team is going to finish with the worst record. Now, is this different than which team is going to get the first pick in the draft, or is that usually?
It's pretty much the same.
It's going to be the same one.
Although I guess there could be a tie.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
Factor, but in this particular case, yeah, dead heat rules apply. So let's say two teams finish with the best record, you would split the winnings on this bet.
Okay, all right. So we stay in
that. Two teams finish with the worst record.
Okay, we stay in that same division, and we're talking about, I mean, what is happening in Houston? You have no idea what is going on with Deshaun Watson for that team, and this is also a defense that's absolutely aging out. How can a sharp bettor take advantage of those truths?
Yeah, and when you look at Houston, I know this is a bet that I can make in week one or preseason, and I know I'm going to have action all season long. And here's why. Houston's going to be the underdog, probably a pretty big underdog in almost every single one of their games, if not every single one of their games this year. So let's say things are getting late and maybe Detroit is also competing for that worst record, or maybe not competing is the word we should use. But you're going to have a chance late in the year to bet Houston on the money line at a very long price if you want some flexibility with this bet. I don't think we're going to need it because I think the lines are going to show a lot of fight, and I don't think Houston's going to show that same fight. Detroit's got that no-nonsense head coach Dan Campbell. I don't get those same vibes with the Texans. They're in full sell mode. We know the Jets just made the deal for Shaq Lawson, and I think that is the, showing your hand a little bit with what Houston's going to do this year. I think Deshaun Watson will be next, and I think the Texans could be one of the worst teams in the history of the NFL after it's all said and done.
That's a big statement. We've seen some pretty bad teams in the past couple of years, by the way. All right, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Trevor Lawrence is chalk, but one of the things in the past week, Mac Jones has jumped up from 8th in the rankings all the way to 2nd at plus 450. 3 questions here. Number 1, is that an overreaction? Number 2, why is it an overreaction? And number 3, what's the smartest play?
So yes to number 1. And I think the big reason why is the media. There's a few teams, as you know, that are very media obsessed. The Patriots obviously are one of them. When they do something significant, it is going to move the market, especially when it's a rookie quarterback who is replacing a veteran quarterback who had to replace the best quarterback of all time. And all of these things kind of all fit in tandem, and they push the market accordingly. I don't think Mac Jones is worth a bet at this high or at this low of a price to win Rookie of the Year. I think Justin Fields, I liked him going into camp, because I thought if he did win the job, the number would move very quickly, just like it did for Mac Jones. But I think now, I think Justin Fields has an opportunity to fly a little bit under the radar week 1. Tough matchup for the Bears in that game against the Rams on Sunday night. I think they will lose that game, and I think Andy Dalton will play poorly in that game. And I think that opens the door for a week 2 game against the Bengals, where Justin Fields can go from what I got him at plus 850 to maybe now plus 4, plus 500 if he plays well in that game. Mac Jones, we talked about this before we taped this segment. There's a way to play Mac Jones without playing Mac Jones, and that's to bet Bill Belichick to win Coach of the Year. Because if Mac Jones plays well, maybe wins the Rookie of the Year, maybe the Pats make the playoffs, a lot of people are going to give Bill Belichick a lot of credit after a dreadful season for the Patriots in 2020.
Well, that's the key. You've got to have a good supporting cast around you, and you've got to have a good head coach that's going to put you in the best position to win. Mac Jones, without a doubt, has the best head coach that's backing him. The question is whether or not he's got the best team around him. That's a look at the team and the offensive player of the Offensive Rookie of the Year season props. But where do you hear how he sees the Jets and the Giants individual props? Check that out in our other segment. For Jared Smith at Pickswise, I'm Steve Overmyer. This is Fanalysis.